Welcome to the Cambridge Tech Podcast, talking all things technology from the heart of the UK's tech capital. Here are your hosts, Faye Holland and James Parton.
Hi, I'm James.
And I'm Faye. So James, how are you? How was last week?
Well, most weeks I struggle to keep up with your laundry list of events and social engagements, so this week I look like a right slacker. I was actually a little bit under the weather coming out the bank holidays, so I didn't get a lot done and spent most of the time just head down kind of catching up with things. This week I'm off in Brighton enjoying the Great Escape Music Festival, so I've really got nothing meaningful to share. So let me just go make a coffee while you go through your long list of things you've done this week. However, I did have to deal with a deluge of responses to last week's NFL trading card news section, so there is that.
Well, I just don't really know what to say about any of that. Well, number one, are you feeling better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. And that's fine. And you're definitely not a slacker, so don't be saying that kind of thing. But I am going to bring the NFL thing back up again because Jamie Bignell is now also in my bad books with you, because when I went to an event I'll tell you about in a moment, he starts talking to me about NFL cards and I'm like, I'm not interested. But then I thought, okay, I'll pretend to be interested. So I started saying, is it like, the kids collect Pokemon cards? And he went, yeah, absolutely. But remember, adults collect Pokemon cards too. And I'm like, no, putting me in a whole heap of, I don't want to know this stuff. So I think I just walked away, but hopefully he'll forgive me.
Watch this space. This isn't going away.
Yeah, I'm going completely off on a tangent now. Like you have top trumps. Does everyone remember top trumps?
Yes.
Okay, so I hope that our listeners do as well, or else this is weird. Maybe we should do a set of Cambridge Tech podcast trump cards for Cambridge Tech. What about something like that? Now that I can get excited about.
That is quite interesting.
Just let me know, listeners, what you think. Is that a good idea? I kind of think that is a good idea. Anyway, right, shall I tell you what I got up to last week?
Yeah, go on then.
Listen, the reason I do this is not to upset you, James. I do it because actually there's some quite interesting stuff going on that I kind of think people might like to hear. But okay, I'm
glad one of us has our finger on the pulse.
Okay, so last Tuesday was the Rising Stars. So this is the Tech Nation Rising Stars regional final for the East of England. But my first observation was the East of England, there was only Stasha from Avartix, who from Trinity Bradfield Prize. She was the only one from Cambridge and actually the only one from the East of England. So we had people from Oxford, Kent and London. And so that kind of baffled me straight away. I kind of got a bit confused of what constitutes the East of England or if it's just the south of England now. So that was kind of interesting. So there was a couple of good presentations, but what I'm going to say is maybe a little bit critical. It's a real stark contrast because all the finalists, apart from Stasha, who was very different to the others, they were all tech. So they're all about doing something but using tech. So there was none of the deep, transformational, innovative tech that we're used to seeing across Cambridge and the East of England. And I didn't like Emmy Nichol was judging. We've judged this competition in the past. I didn't catch up with Emmy just to find out what did she think about that, because I thought it was quite an eye-opener that it was such a different audience.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only two pence to stick in here is we didn't get any outreach from the organisers to promote the competition this year. So that's probably part of the reason why we didn't get good representation from the East of England there, because I guess if I didn't see anything, then maybe all the usual channels weren't contacted to promote it to startups locally.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and I didn't. So, I mean, maybe that's a conversation we can take back to Tech Nation, because you want it to be representative of the region. And don't get me wrong, the people that are presenting, they're doing their job and they're bringing new tech to the markets. And actually, the company that won Decima 2 It was Alexis Monks that presented from Oxford. They're an e-commerce company doing A/B testing. So, you know, they are fixing a problem. It's very different, but I just feel we could probably get a much broader mix. You know, we've just done 21 to Watch. We've just done Trinity Bradfield Prize. You know, there's so many other things going around. I'm sure we could have populated with a few more companies. But that, you know, that's that. So, you know, interesting observation. There were also, and it took me ages to work out the breakdown of it because they did the Rising Stars bit. And then, you know, as I've said, Alexis from Decima 2 won the 334,000 pounds from that. There were then 3 more presentations, which were the regional winners who were in the running for One to Win, and some of them will present at London Tech Week. So there we actually had people that we do recognise. So Alexandra French was there from Zampler. She did a great job, and we're going to be talking to Alexandra on the podcast soon. And there was also Raj who presented. So Raj and Kavitha, some of you will remember from an episode way back, episode 45, they're Synaptic. So they're in the running for One to Win as well. They're actually raising funding now. So if anyone's interested in EduTech, then do go check them out. So that was the Tech Nation event. Then I did a couple of mentoring sessions. The first one was with the Impulse cohort, which was really good. And then last Thursday, I took a trek over to Norwich, doing a masterclass on branding with the startups and spin-outs from Norwich Research Park, which was really good.
Nice. Yeah, well, like I say, I'm glad one of us has done some interesting things this week. So you're carrying the flag there again for us, so thank you for that. I'm going to just go off and enjoy the music. So, yeah, there'll be nothing for me next week either. Great. Okay, so should we move on to this week's news from around Cambridge and the area?
Yeah, let's start with a bit of a celebration. It was a great week last week as the King's Award for Enterprise was announced, and the East of England represented the 4th best performance by any region in the UK. Cambridgeshire-based winners included Global Graphics Software, Costello Medical and Wonder. So congratulations to all of those, and anyone interested in finding out more, Business Weekly did a really nice post on LinkedIn that you can go and check out.
Nice. Congratulations to everyone there. So now we have 3 company financial update stories to share this week. So Arm announced record-breaking Q4 results, passing the $1 billion revenue mark in a quarter for the first time in its history. It seems the demand for all things AI is behind the growth. Multiple markets drove that growth as well, including data centers, automotive, smartphones and IoT. And of course, AI growth from the cloud to the edge was creating demand for more energy efficient compute. New AI hardware, the rise of AI agents and the emergence of smaller, more efficient language models are unlocking new AI use cases in data centers. CEO Rennie Haas said that time and time again we have seen AI workloads, especially inference, migrate from the cloud to the edge, driven by the need for faster response times, enhanced privacy and reduced energy consumption. Arm is uniquely positioned to lead this shift with the most pervasive compute platform in the world, already enabling AI inference at scale across cloud and edge environments.
Cambridge location software specialist One Spatial reported revenue growth of 3% to £33.4 million in the year to January 31st. Targeting utilities and local government in the UK, they've contracts with 22 US states, and contracts were also secured with 2 UK county councils, which will generate a combined annual value of £1.5 million. One Spatial CEO Claire Milverton said, "We've made good progress across the group this year, with software revenues exceeding expectations and the first meaningful sales of our higher margin One Streetworks SaaS solution. Recurring revenue now represents 62% of total revenue, reflecting the benefits of our strategic investments in product development, sales capability and leadership."
Nyobolt, who are the pioneers of high-power ultra-fast charging technologies, have secured $150 million in new contracts, plus $30 million in new investment from international backers. Those backers include IQ Capital, Latitude, Scanner Invest in Sweden, and Takasago Industry in Japan. The funding will fuel Nowabolt's technology development and market expansion, including providing battery technology for power-hungry data centres. Sai Shira Reddy, co-founder and CEO of Nowabolt, said the world is experiencing unprecedented demand for power, not only to decarbonise heavy industries, but to provide enough resources to handle the surge in AI infrastructure. The energy status quo can't and shouldn't sustain these demands. Our vertically integrated technology is already positively impacting customers, enabling them to experience stable, fast charge solutions when they need them the most.
And in other news, we're off to space with Cambridge tech innovator Cambrionics celebrating after its ThunderSync 3 C10 hub was officially certified for use aboard the International Space Station. Cambrionics is a state-of-the-art hub that uses Thunderbolt technology to simultaneously provide guaranteed data speeds between 1 to 4 gigabits per second and efficient charging for 10 devices. It went through rigorous testing to meet the stringent standards required, as you would expect, on board the ISS, and outlasted several demanding tests under heavy heat and magnetic loads, and proved capable of providing power and data necessary for the operation of critical hardware in orbit. So well done to the Cambrionics team, and what a great case study to have.
One close to home for you, Faye. Cambridge Management Consulting is to establish a new IT and professional services business on the Falkland Islands in the South Atlantic starting June 1st. They will be offering a full suite of managed IT and professional services to the entire Falkland Islands, providing benefit to business and residents alike. Demonstrations of another Cambridge HQ company having global reach. So does this mean you're now going to networking events in the Falkland Islands?
I'm going to say probably not. But it's another string to the bow. So this is something that the chair, Tim Passingham, has been planning for quite a while. So yes, I expect I'll still be very much Cambridge based, but the rest of the company will continue with their global reach. And that's the news for this week. So on to today's episode, where we're delighted to speak to Amelia Miller. Amelia is a psychologist and entrepreneur and co-founder and CEO of Ivy, a platform dedicated to assisting women in re-entering the workforce after career breaks. So, Amelia, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Why don't we start with you giving us an introduction to yourself, but then also telling us a little bit about how Ivy came about?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here. I'm Amelia. I'm co-founder and CEO of Ivy. My background is originally in psychology. That's what I studied when I was at Cambridge. I'm a published psychologist through the university and currently a fellow at Downing. And in terms of my interest, it's everything to do with gender differences, but specifically gender differences in the recruitment process. So how, for example, male and female candidates read job descriptions very differently, all the way through to having different likelihoods of actually pressing apply to that job. I then did a massive 180 and I went into banking. So I was at Goldman Sachs here in London in foreign exchange, sales and trading. Half loved it, half hated it. It definitely loved the macro side, loved the market, fed my competitive spirit, but it just didn't scratch the entrepreneurial itch. And so I left to join a health startup called Zuki before moving full-time onto Ivy last year in March. And we launched the platform in July. The reason that I co-founded Ivy alongside my sister Lydia is because we really watched our mum experience the problem that we're solving. What is Ivy? We're an agentic AI marketplace, and we connect companies to the world's largest talent pool, which is the return to work market. So anybody returning to the workforce after a career break. This market is overwhelmingly female because women are still today most likely to take time out of work for career breaks, most notably for caregiving. The reason that we, experienced this problem, it was firsthand through our mum. She had an incredible career, 3 kids, she'd risen to director level, and then she left the workforce for motherhood. But that is by no means the only reason for career breaks, just a caveat. And we watched firsthand how unbelievably difficult it was for her to get back into the workforce. And that, wasn't for a lack of talent or a lack of ambition, but because the jobs market fundamentally is not set up for those returning to work. And there's a few key reasons why that was, and I can dive into them in a bit more detail maybe later on. But in our mum's case, first and foremost, a huge loss of confidence, which was actually preventing her from applying to jobs at her level when she was returning. Beyond that, it was a big attrition from incumbent talent networks that she had. So her old professional network had gone. She wasn't on LinkedIn, so we had to create her a LinkedIn profile. And even when she was applying to jobs, applicant tracking systems were screening her CV out because it was nonlinear and because it had this gap in employment. And as a result, hiring teams and recruitment teams weren't seeing her as an applicant. And we looked at this and thought, how many others is this happening to? And that was really our impetus to start our research and start exploring actually how big is this problem and why is nobody solving it?
Yeah, thanks, Amelia, for sharing that. It was obviously a very personal story there. As well as that experience, helping your mother get back into the workforce, can we just go back a little bit and delve a bit deeper into the psychology side of things and your research? How has that research, influenced and impacted the development of the product? And I'm guessing that forms a large part of your competitive advantage.
Definitely. There's so much I could speak about here. I'm so passionate about psychology and academic psychology in, to be honest, all areas of business, but particularly in entrepreneurship. And it kind of expands at a few key areas, but maybe I'll touch on kind of 3 key areas. The first is, gender differences in recruitment. Like, what does this actually look like? What does this actually mean? We know that men and women have far, far, far different approaches to how they read jobs and how they apply to jobs. A few key examples, you probably know the well-versed statistic, which was out of Harvard, and men will apply to jobs when they meet kind of between 50 and 60% of the qualifications, whereas women will apply to jobs when they meet between 90 and 100% of the qualifications listed on the job spec. Beyond that, there was a study, I think it was done by Galfa in 2011, and it looked at the wording and actually adjectives used within job descriptions. Traditionally, job descriptions have been written for the male reader. That's just a function of how what the workforce composition has looked like in history. Job descriptions and job specs haven't really advanced a huge amount in the last 20, 30 years. And what the study looked at is it basically analysed masculine coded and feminine coded words in job specs. And masculine coded words would be things like competitive, whereas feminine coded words would be things like collaboration or communication or teamwork. And it found that most job adverts are more likely to use masculine coded words. And when those words are used, it significantly discourages female applications. There's other studies that I can allude to as well. One done by Kaufman and her colleagues, and they basically looked at the specifics of language in job ads, and they found that when the job advert was much more specific in terms of what the role would actually look like. So instead of just saying you'll be a sales manager, actually being more specific and saying this job will mean you're managing a team of 25 sales reps, dramatically again encourages female applications. Salary is another massive one, and that's what we've done a lot of internal research on at Ivy. When salaries are put on jobs, it significantly increases the number of female applicants. That is because women are more likely than not to be managers of the household budget. And when returning to work or when looking for a job, they need to know exactly what income they need to be bringing in to be able to cover childcare costs, for example, or to be able to be, breaking even. And as a result, when salaries are put on job specs, it's game changing. We did a study with one of our clients who didn't put any salaries on their jobs, and we said to them, why don't you try listing your salaries? They came back to us and said, well, we're not competitive with the other big 4 consultancies. They're a small consultancy firm, so it's not going to look attractive. And we said, why don't you just try it? And it increased female application rates on the Ivy platform by 297% when they did that. And all of this research is just super important, and fundamentally underpins a lot of the product development that we're doing at Ivy as well. The second bucket in terms of this research is more around behavioral nudge theory and how we can incorporate that within the platform. What I mean by that is, how can you use subtleties like color of buttons or messaging actually embedded within the technology to, again, encourage more female applications to jobs? For example, what our technology does is when a candidate is looking at a job, will be scanning her profile and CV, will scan the job that she's looking at, and will identify an internal match, internal score. And when that's more than 50 to 60% qualified, she will get a call to action that says, you know what, you should really consider applying for this role, again, to really try and boost that application number from the source. And then the third bucket is how psychology is used just in building a business. I'm really passionate about this. Things like the IKEA effect is a great example, is if your customers feel like they're building your company with you, they're more likely to be more loyal to you. This goes back to a study where IKEA furniture, if you feel like you've built the furniture yourself, or if you have built the furniture yourself, you're less likely to throw it away and you're actually more likely to pay higher monetary value on it. And again, incorporating a lot of these things into how we're building our community and we're building our startup from the ground up has also been really important.
I mean, that's a great overview. Thank you for sharing that. And it kind of never ceases to amaze me how much bias there is in things. You know, there's great opportunity, but there's also so much bias. And that's before you've even, you've got challenges of going back to work or looking at gender pay gap or anything like that. So if that's the context of how you've developed Ivy, how do you then actually use the platform to specifically tackle some of those issues?
Yeah, so in terms of how we look at this problem, so the gender pay gap is very much still prevalent. There's a lot of misconception in terms of what the gender pay gap is. A lot of people think it's men and women getting paid different amounts for the same work. That's illegal. That it happens in some, dramatic cases, but by and large, that's not what the gender pay gap means. It's the median hourly difference in wages for men and women within a specific industry. The primary driver of the gender pay gap, which was found in Claudia Goldin's Nobel Prize-winning research in 2023, is gender differences in the taking of career breaks. Because women are more likely to take career breaks and leave the workforce, when they then come back in, because the pay cut is so dramatic and because the occupational downgrading is so dramatic upon their return, they usually re-enter either lower paying positions or lower paying fields, and it completely stunts that future career trajectory. And so at that point of women exiting the workforce, that's where we really see the gender pay gap start to come into its own. When we're 18, it's negligible, and actually women get paid slightly more. It's really when we hit our 30s that you start to see it take effect, and that's because women are leaving the workforce for caregiving, not only for children but for elderly relatives as well. Women are also more likely to leave the workforce for sick leave, which is a huge driver of career breaks as well here in the UK. And so for us, tackling the gender pay gap, you can only do that if you can tackle the return to work problem. So if fundamentally you can allow women to return to work at as close to a 0% pay cut as possible, that is the only way, in my opinion, alongside childcare, which is kind of another kettle of fish in itself because it's very expensive in the UK. You can't meaningfully solve this problem. And at the moment, there is nobody that is solving this at scale using technology and crucially using AI. A lot of the solutions that exist, especially in Europe, are in the form of coaching businesses or consultancy businesses or sort of bespoke recruitment agencies, which are fantastic, but they're simply not able to solve this problem at scale. And fundamentally, that's what we're on a mission to do with Ivy.
Yeah, you mentioned AI there. That's a good segue into my next question, which was, we are Cambridge Tech Podcast, so let's spend a little bit of time talking about the actual tech behind the platform. How are you using AI? What are you developing that's proprietary to you that really, solves these problems you're describing?
We look at the recruitment landscape and we see what's happening now, which is it's completely broken. There are very large in-house recruitment teams, and they're spending a lot of time manually sifting through thousands, and it's genuinely thousands of applications that they're getting at the moment because it's such a candidate-heavy jobs market, and because functions like LinkedIn's Easy Apply or ChatGPT make it extremely easy for candidates to fire off a huge number of applications. Recruitment teams are, first of all, relying a lot more on their applicant tracking system, which has blanket algorithms to cull, 70% or 80% of the CVs. It still means that the recruitment team is sifting through a huge number of CVs. it's cumbersome, it's manual, and it's completely broken, and it's this race to the bottom. The Financial Times called it a race to the bottom, where both sides are leaning on AI, and it's not working. Where we see the recruitment industry going, what we're betting on at Ivy is actually a movement away from the act of a traditional job application. I fundamentally believe that in 2 years' time, job applicants will not apply to jobs. Instead, what you'll have is AI agents that own a talent network and crucially own the data and the data set underneath that talent network that can proactively source the best 5 to 10 candidates for a specific role without the candidate needing to apply and without the candidate actually knowing they're perfect for the role or not. What does that mean? Well, it solves a huge problem for recruitment teams because they want as many people to see their job as possible, but they want only the best and the most relevant applicants to come through. So essentially, what you can provide in this future of recruitment is agency style service at the cost of software because AI is doing it for you. That's what we're betting on at Ivy. That's what Silicon Valley is betting on with recent fundraisers we've seen, like Merkle raised 100 million in January. That's exactly what they do. They surface AI developer talent based on their agentic model. What we're building at Ivy is an AI agent that can surface returner talent. So what we're sitting on at the moment is a data set of 28,000 returners. It's very rich. We gather a lot of data, and that's what we're training our models on. So it is optimized to surface talent that these other systems are missing.
And so just to clarify my understanding then, so both the candidate and the recruiter, the HR team are both using Ivy. So it's kind of combating that problem you described in the Financial Times, where you've got separate AI-driven services like feeding each other and just racing to the bottom.
Yeah, and recruitment teams will never rely on just one AI agent or just one talent network, just like they never rely on one jobs board now. You know, you see big companies and they'll be using 15 to 20 jobs boards, whether it's for generic talent, they'll go to LinkedIn, tech talent, they may go to HackerJob, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really where we see the industry going. And, you know, where Merkle surfaces developer talent, Ivy surfaces returner talent. And we, you know, we'll see companies relying on these different talent pools for different hires, but also they want to have as wide a top of funnel as possible in their candidate sourcing. They want to be able to reach as many applicants as possible. So they'll be utilizing, you know, a lot of these networks, and especially networks that can surface this untapped talent. We're seeing a big trend towards dormant talent that you can't find elsewhere, talent that isn't on LinkedIn. Companies want to be able to access it. And so what we're seeing is companies that have ways to almost like entice these candidates out of hiding and bring them into somewhere where they can offer them to companies very easily and very quickly is something that's really in demand right now.
So I'm going to we'll come back to Ivy in a moment. But actually, I just want to pause for a moment because what's coming across is, you know, obviously you're very passionate about this topic, very knowledgeable about it, and you're also using technology to, you know, help solve the problem. You were named pretty much this time last year, actually, on the Inspiring 50 list, and that's how we actually first connected. Does it help being part of that community? Because obviously that's 50 women doing amazing things in tech. Has that actually helped you on this journey, you know, or do you see opportunities where it could help you?
It's massively helped. I think, especially as a first-time founder and a female founder building in AI, network is so important. And actually, it's far more important than I thought it would be on this journey. It's needed in so many areas. It's needed in B2B sales. It's needed in fundraising. It's needed in just founder-to-founder communication to just ask questions. And the Inspiring 50 community and network has been fantastic for me. I was 100% at least qualified in that room. I think I was a late addition, honestly, because the caliber of women in that network is absolutely insane. You know, you're standing there next to the UK CEO of Microsoft, for example, or CEO of Ogilvy, and the like insights that you can get from those women and the introductions that you can get is invaluable. And that being a part of that list has definitely got my foot in the door for speaking at London Tech Week, for example, and just all of these things in terms of elevating my personal brand as a founder as well. And I think as women, network is really important, and wherever there are spaces where you can have a kind of female focused networking, especially in women that are building fast scaling businesses, is really important, because we know that they're just much harder to come by. Whether it's on the list, we have the CEO of FTSE businesses, but then you also have women that are building very, very, very hyper growth businesses, like the founder of Fertility, for example. And so you have this complete spectrum of women that you can just learn from and network with, and no matter what stage you're looking at, there's something to learn from everyone. So for me, that's been super, super valuable.
I mean, I think that's great, Amelia, because we hear a lot. I mean, it's a regular conversation on the podcast about encouraging founders, entrepreneurs to apply for competitions, for prizes, to put themselves out there, because the benefits of the network and the doors that open off the back of that are just, so important, to both your personal growth and the company's growth as well.
Yeah, and we're another great example just around networks in general is we're doing Boulderton's launch program at the moment, which is where they bring in about 10 pre-seed startups to work out of their office, and everyone's building in that AI space or the agentic AI space, and just being in the same room around a bunch of other founders, the conversations you have are incredible, and you're thinking about new product features every single day based on conversations that you're having, with the guy sat next to you. And again, that network and like the facilitation of those sort of networks is great for your personal brand as a founder, but it's also great for product growth as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, going back to some of the challenges that you were describing, it kind of struck me that, some of these problems are not problems you can solve purely through software, right? There's some kind of educational challenges in changing the perception of, returning to work as being, a widespread issue which affects millions of people and not just this small niche. You talked about reaching hard to reach potential employees. As well as the software side of the business, how are you tackling those kind of education challenges?
It's a really good question, and something that we get, and I guess the education is twofold. There's a big education piece around, and what I just beat the drum on every day, is the gender pay gap. A lot of people just fundamentally don't understand what it is, how it's measured, and how career breaks are that primary driver of it. And then within the kind of employer space, I think what's existed a lot in the market at the moment, and kind of as I alluded to before, the return to work, even the term return to work, it's a little bit outdated. A lot of like the current solutions that exist are, not necessarily the most modern, the most viral, the most interesting, the most fun. And I think that shifting that narrative is super important as well. Like our ICP, in terms of the candidates on our platform, are actually women in their 30s, all the way up to, of course, women in their 60s, even women in their 70s. But the demographic is actually a lot younger than you might think. And something that we've been really, really hot on is actually how can we change the narrative around making this cool, making this interesting, making this something where people want to go, where people want to network, where people want to meet other interesting women that are, of the same age as them or live in the same area as them. And crucially, how can we use technology to do this at scale? I think that's been something that's really, really important to us. And that's why we're called Ivy. And, we're not called mumsbacktowork.com, because we don't want to silo this problem into being something where people can form a quick judgment about like the caliber of the candidates. What we want to do is let our talent pool speak for itself. And what we've been laser focused on is building up a really large and a really, really effing qualified talent pool, because we know that that's the selling point to employers. We can demonstrate, look, we've got 30,000 women that have an average sector experience of 12 years. They're ready to start tomorrow. it's a no-brainer that companies bite and they want to go, oh, that's interesting. Can I have a look at your talent pool? And instead of presenting it as a moral necessity or a nice to have, it's a business imperative actually that you're hiring from this talent pool, because it's talent pool that you're not accessing at the moment, and it's fantastic talent. And so again, for us, it's changing the narrative around the return to work market. It's not DEI tech. It's not diversity points. It's talent, just like any other talent source.
Yeah, and you're nurturing that talent as well, aren't you? So you've got the platform, but then you also do other things that support, the women getting back into work, and whether it's rebuilding their self-esteem or just, getting them ready to go back into the workforce. Tell us a little bit about some of those other things that you do.
Yeah, of course. Before we even built any product, we did thousands of interviews with women returning to work, and also with hundreds of interviews with recruitment teams to actually figure out the pain points. I think some tech companies build blindly first and go, oh, I think I've got this amazing product. I'll spend 6 months building it and then we'll see if anyone wants to buy it. We kind of went the other way. And again, this was based on a lot of feedback we got from mentors and other founders. We did our research to figure out what are those pain points. And there were two key things that stuck out to us on the return side, on the talent side. The first was a loss of confidence. This happens in women that have taken a career break of 6 months all the way up to 30 years. Confidence disappears super quickly. And it might sound quite meta, but actually it's really, really important to address that. The second was a theme of loneliness, and a lot of women feel very alone in their return to work journey. The reason being, it's not something that's actually being discussed a huge amount in friendship groups, because the likelihood is that some women in your friendship group never left the workforce. Some did, some never want to return. And so there's a little bit of judgment on both sides. And so it's not something that's openly discussed. And so we found there was a big need for community, first and foremost, but a big need for upskilling in terms of actually how can you get ready to return to work. A massive thought that a lot of women have, and actually it's something I'm doing a webinar on today with the community, is where the hell do I actually begin? I know I want to return to work, but I've got no idea what I want to do. Do I want to go back to being a corporate drone, or do I want to do something more mission driven? Do I care about salary anymore? Or actually, do I prioritize flexibility? What skills have I got? What new skills have I gained? What industries are those skills relevant for? What industries are growing? What industries are shrinking? So what should I be focusing my time on? And all of this stuff is what we address within the upskilling side of our platform. So we've got a huge number of free resources to actually help women map all of this out so that they are feeling more confident and more ready to actually begin that journey of applying.
So jumping back to your personal journey, obviously that transition from academia to entrepreneurship is a huge shift. So could we ask you to maybe share some of your personal growth moments, learning experiences? How have you adjusted? What's that journey been like for you?
Definitely. I guess I had a bit of a buffer in the sense that I went from Goldman Sachs, big corp, into a startup for 2 years and then being a founder myself. I'm so happy that I made that transition and I didn't jump necessarily straight into being a founder, just because it gave me a chance to learn the tech stack of an early stage startup versus just literally using Bloomberg all day, every day. I found it amazing, and it's been such I feel like it was my calling. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I just didn't enjoy being in a large corporation, and the salary cut was atrocious, don't get me wrong, but I'm so much more motivated than I've ever been. And when a company is yours, it's just crazy how much energy you have when you wake up in the morning. I'm so passionate about solving this problem. It's such a big problem, and it's a problem that's been ignored for so long. And so for me, it's wake up every day and knowing that, okay, I'm not just solving this for myself and my personal gains. I'm actually solving this for the billions of women that this is going to affect over the next 50 years. In terms of, I guess, things that have been difficult, fundraising was a crash course. I've never fundraised before, and you have to book yourself up, you have to sell yourself, and you have to really kind of just jump in at the deep end. So that was a steep learning curve for us, especially as two female founders. But I think the main thing is like, everyone's winging it as a founder, and you just have to be able to be super nimble and pick things up as they go and fight fires every single day. And like, if that's something that you enjoy doing, then it's definitely, a lifestyle that's suited to you. I will say I've played a lot of sport throughout my life. I played a lot when I was at Cambridge. I played rugby and I played lacrosse. And for me, playing team sport has probably been one of the most helpful things in terms of being a founder. Resilience, communication, teamwork, picking yourself up when you get losses or rejections or no's, and just having that attitude of wanting and needing to win all the time, I found has been very, very helpful to me in terms of helping me on this journey as well.
Yeah, I wanted to just jump back to what you said there about fundraising and dealing with investors. It kind of struck me when you were describing the benefits of the platform, the way that you described that this is just good business sense, right? You're not adopting this platform because of some sense of, CSR goal or diversity goal, right? This just makes good business sense. That felt like that was probably something that you'd spent a lot of time having to go through with an investor community who obviously, let's be honest, is largely a male-driven community as well. So has that been that kind of development of the narrative through that fundraising process?
Definitely. And I mean, we are always refining our pitch, and I would say no one's pitch is ever perfect. And you have to, in terms of like how fundraising works, and a lot of the advice we've got is, your first 10 pitches, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And actually what you do is you pick up on these questions that investors tend to be asking quite a lot. So for example, with us, a lot of our early questions were around Trump's DEI rollbacks and a lot of hesitation around what that means for Europe. And so for us, it's understanding, people are pigeonholing us to being diversity tech, which we're not. Great. How can we address that? And how can we, tackle that head on in the beginning of our pitch so that question doesn't even need to come up would be a classic example.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I mean, great insights there for people starting, certainly female founders. And I did see your LinkedIn post. I'm going to come back to another LinkedIn post as my last comment. But I saw the post recently when you were aligning being a founder to the sports that you run, and I thought it was absolutely perfect and really demonstrated that well. One of the other reasons that we invited you onto the podcast was that, and you mentioned it at the top of the call, being a fellow now of Downing College. What do you think that's going to be like? What are you going to bring back to the college as alumna?
Yeah, it was amazing to get that honour from Downing and from Professor Virgo. And for me, I'm just really excited to be more involved in the ecosystem. I had a period, and again, this is when I was in a big corp, where I just had no connection back to Cambridge, and I just graduated, and I felt really, really disconnected. And then you go back for your free masters 5 years after your matriculation, and that was the first time I'd been back, and I just thought, well, it's crazy that it's been 2-3 years since I graduated and I haven't set foot back in Cambridge. Why is that? How can I get more involved? What I'm really excited about is to just bring this conversation into academia a little bit more. I'm really, really interested in speaking to and collaborating with a lot of research that's being done around the gender pay gap and gender differences. Again, hammering that and beating that drum around education regarding what the gender pay gap actually is. I recently went back to Downing to speak alongside the Psychological and Behavioural Sciences Society around a lot of different things, but what we touched a lot on was AI and gender representation in AI. It's something that I'm extremely passionate about around. I want to get the statistic right, and this might not be fully correct, but I think only around 15% of AI leaders in Silicon Valley, which is where a lot of the innovation is of course happening right now, are female. This, combined with data sets that these models are being trained on, again, being overwhelmingly male, is a massive problem. And it's a problem that I'm really, really passionate about, because the foundations of a lot of these models is going to shape the future of the world for who knows how long to come. And if those models are built on data sets that are not representative of the world, and it is really scary, that's also something that I'm really interested in networking and speaking to people at Cambridge that are like building in this space. And what are we going to do about this, either from a regulatory perspective or from a fundamental data set perspective? There was a study actually that I posted about the other day. Again, very, very scary. And it basically looked at feeding CVs into different LLMs, and they basically fed a bunch of CVs, and the only thing they varied was the name on the CVs. And they found that resumes with white associated names were favored 85% of the time. That is a classic example of AI amplifying existing biases that already exist, because the underlying data set either contains inherent bias from humans or is just, bias in and of itself. Subtle things like that, again, are really scary. Another thing, I guess, in the context of recruitment, because it's what I know, is, if you just ask AI to write you a job description for an engineer, like ChatGPT or something, again, it will give you a job description that has very masculine coded words. Again, we know that masculine coded words discourages female applicants. So again, just really passionate about how we can use AI and how we can leverage AI in the right way, and just to ensure that these models don't have those underlying biases built within them. And that's why I think female representation at the board level at these big AI companies is so, so important.
Yeah, no, that's really, absolutely agree. I mean, it suddenly struck me actually that we've covered a huge amount of ground here, and it's been a really insightful conversation, but we didn't actually establish kind of where you are with the startup right now in terms of, have you got onboarded live customers? Are you what would be the call to action if we've got hiring managers listening to this episode and are keen to get involved, and candidates as well, of course, where are you in that kind of, in your kind of, your go-to-market? And what would be the call to action for people?
Yeah, I would say if we were a human, maybe we'd be a toddler at the moment, or maybe still an infant. We're very much early stage pre-seed startup. We launched in July, but what we have seen is there's a big market demand for this solution. Again, we didn't build blindly. We did our homework. But for anyone listening, if you're a hiring manager and you want to access talent that is untapped, that your competitors can't access, that is predominantly female, and that is ready to start tomorrow, the return to work market is a fantastic talent pool for you. You can, of course, hire from Ivy. Literally, ivy.jobs is our website, and feel free to get in touch for you can post a free job. But beyond that, just make sure if you're a hiring manager that when you're writing your job descriptions, you are putting a sentence about flexibility. You are putting a sentence about being open to having those with non-linear careers. You're not using masculine coded words. All of these subtleties mean that you will just attract a lot more applicants, and a lot more applicants of varying backgrounds. And we know that diversity of thought is good for business. We know that it leads to more profitability, and we know that it is a key KPI for hiring managers as well. We do loads of free webinars too. So if you follow our company account on LinkedIn, you'll be able to, join a bunch of them for free. I did one yesterday on job description specifically, and the nuances there. And then for anyone that's listening that is returning to work, join the Ivy community. It is a fantastic space. We do a huge number of events, both in person and online. We have a discussion hub where you can post anonymous or non-anonymous questions or rants or whatever you want. And then for anyone that's listening that is neither, but is an ally of the mission and of the cause, then would encourage you to tell your employer about Ivy and see if it's something that they want to build into their talent acquisition strategy as well.
Perfect. And just to wrap, I have a little bit of a funny story. Commendations definitely for your mastery of LinkedIn, because you did one post at the start of April, and I literally sat there going, huh? What? Because it was so different to what you normally do. And it really took me a good few minutes to realise it was an April Fool's Day joke. So I encourage people to just go back and take a look at it. I think you probably caught quite a few people out with that one as well. But 100%, I would recommend that people follow you, certainly on LinkedIn, because you've got some real insightful information in there. So well done on the LinkedIn side of things.
Thanks. Well, honestly, it's quite cringe when I like pressing post. But I will say, actually, to any like upcoming founders, building out loud and building a personal brand as a founder has been game changing for us. Like all of our B2B leads come through. Most of them come through LinkedIn, and it's because a lot of our posts go viral, whether it's my personal account or on our Ivy account. People just see the brand, and it's really good free marketing. And there's some unbelievable female founders that are building out loud that you can follow, the likes of Amy Smale, who's the founder of Odd Muse, Eshta Kabra, who's the founder of By Rotation, Grace Beverly, who's the founder of Tala. And these female founders give a lot of valuable information out for free, and it's just a really, really good way to see people's mistakes, if nothing else, and see what works for them too. So I definitely encourage to build out loud. Don't go into stealth mode. It's quite cringe, and no one's going to copy your idea if it's a good enough idea. So yeah, I'd really recommend like being vocal and having your face associated with your brand as well, especially if it's consumer facing.
Yeah, great. Absolutely agree with you. Great advice. Amelia, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it was really, really good to be here, and look forward to maybe seeing you in person in Cambridge.
Or in London Tech Week, of course.
Oh, amazing. We'll definitely hang out.
Today's show was produced by Carl Homer of Cambridge TV and supported by our media partner, Business Weekly. The Cambridge Tech Podcast is available on all major podcast platforms and on cambridgetechpodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. It'll really help others discover the show.